Welcome to another episode of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver. I am broadcasting from my little she shed in my Los Angeles backyard. And this is my show where I get to talk with songwriters from around the world about books, and we get to swap songs. And it has been a really awesome way to spend the time, I guess, since the beginning of COVID. This is the 88th episode. That means 88 guests talking about books, swapping songs. It's been a nice couple of years. What can I tell you? We're in March. I just want to say that as a woman, I love the fact that March, this month of action that commands us to move, not just sit. I like that it's called March, not sit on the couch and watch TV. I love that this is Women's Month. And it's a call to action this whole month, and especially tomorrow. We're broadcasting on Thursday, as always. Tomorrow is a day that I always call the International Day of Action, March 4th. So I just wanted to kind of say, that's what's on my mind, and I invite you, dear listener, whether it is March 3rd or March 4th or whatever day you're listening into the show on, think about that idea of March 4th and what kind of action to take. What else can I say about this month of March? I'm going to be touring up in Central California a little bit, so if you are in the Springville area especially, check out my tour schedule, and next month I'll be in Paso Robles. I like to say Paso Robles, but I think that I'm wrong in that. So I hope to see you. I am excited to invite today, as my special guest, the final Hawk from the band Icy Hawks in LA. It's been my first band residency here on the show, and it's been really fun to just kind of make my way hawk by hawk, as Anne Lamott would say, bird by bird, make my way through the band and talk to the different songwriters and just hear the story and connect with them, hear the stories of the band, but also hear their stories and connect with them. Today we have Paul Marshall on the show. He is like Victoria and the other Paul and Rob, who were on the show a few weeks ago. He's a hawk in the band. He's also been in some other bands like Strawberry Alarm Clock. He has toured extensively, and he is based right here in Los Angeles. I'm really excited to bring him onto the show. So here we go right now. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Arielle.
You are my second Paul and my fourth hawk.
And I'm so happy and so proud to be here. But I have to stop right now because several things in your intro, wonderful introduction. I've seen a lot of marches go by in my life, and I never, ever thought of March 4th as an action. And I love that idea. It's great. So I'm going to be ready to March 4th tomorrow.
Yay! Good.
And,
love that.
And you said bird by bird. And I read that book years ago, and I still use that title as a quote for my kids and for me when I'm facing a huge project.
Yeah.
And I need to get going on it. Well, how do you do it? You do it
just bird by bird.
That is so great.
I'm so glad that you know that book.
I do.
We just kicked off Tomes and Tunes talking about books right away. How cool is that?
Right away. It was recommended to me by an old dear friend who is one of my great book resources, because she's a fine reader and writer. I met her in college, and she always has recommendations for me, and that was one of them from long ago. And you see what an impression it made.
Yeah, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. I think the subtitle, I might be getting it a little wrong, but some instructions on writing and life. And
Could be. I don't remember that.
it's such a great book for writers, but really I feel like it applies to, all of the lessons in it, just to life. That title line as well, bird by bird.
I'm sad to say I don't really remember much of the book. I enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
that particular,
It sticks out, right?
it
Just that
really,
lesson.
it's unforgettable, and I use it frequently.
Yeah. The other thing in that book that I think about a lot is she has a chapter called Shitty First Drafts.
I remember, yeah,
Yeah,
remember
and
that title of that.
it just gives, I feel like it just gives us permission. Like, oh yeah, just bird by bird, the first step is just to get down your shitty first draft,
Yeah,
and just, she calls it also the down draft, where you're just getting it down, and then there's the updraft where you're polishing it up, and then I don't remember what she calls that third last draft, but she describes it like almost like tapping on each tooth to make sure that all the fillings are in the right place, and you know
that's great that you remember, all those things about the book, and and it's so true, and it's so much like March 4th. I mean, you really have to just start by
mm,
putting one foot in front of the other, and then you're kind of on your way. And it's that way with songwriting as well as with whatever kind of writing she was talking about, probably.
yeah, totally. Well, I'll tell you, the story of March 4th was that back in 1999, I think it was, I was living in Boston, and on March 4th, I never gave a thought to the date before, but on March 4th, I actually had something I had to do. It was a really important thing that I had to do, but I was feeling like I had some cold feet about the whole thing. And I woke up that morning. I always listened to the radio. My alarm clock was set to, radio station, and when the alarm went off that morning, the DJ was like, something like, "Good morning, Boston, March 4th." And it was the first time that I'd ever heard it as a command, but ever since then, I have always honored that day with at least some like mental March 4th. Sometimes it's a grand gesture, but a lot of times it's just a mental approach.
Tomorrow, I'm going to think of it as an entire new beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. Good
Wow.
idea. Well, that was a great lead in.
I want to tell you one more thing about March 4th.
Okay,
As long as we're talking about it, and it's,
please.
timely.
Yeah.
So I built this little she shed, 10 by 12 shed, back in 2018. I didn't know why I needed it, but I felt this, like it was a really big thing. I'm not someone to just, throw up a she shed in my backyard without any thought. Like I gave it a lot of thought, and I wasn't sure what I wanted it or needed it for, but I felt like it was going to be drastically important in my life. And so I hired a contractor. He put up this shed, and the first night before the flooring was down, it was just plywood and nothing was painted. And the first night that the shed was up, my sweetheart and I came in here and we got some pizza and we opened up a bottle of champagne to celebrate, my she shed. And we were just in here. I think there might have been a little music on, and we're having pizza, and I was lying back looking up at the ceiling, plywood ceiling, and I wish I could change my camera so you could see it. But as I was, just lying there listening to music and thinking about what was I going to do in this space, I realized that the plywood had some stamps from the lumber yard on it, and each plank of the plywood had the same stamps on it. They said the date, and they said the word attention, and they said the word shift, and the date that they're all stamped is March 4th.
Oh,
It wasn't March 4th. It was like, April something, but
yeah.
so when I painted the ceiling of this shed, I actually painted around that so that when I'm in here, a lot of times if I just need a perspective shift or something, I'll lie on my back on the rug and just look up, and I always see that March 4th and attention and shift.
So inspirational.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
great.
it's
Yeah.
great.
Well, thank you for being on, Paul. First, I want to invite anybody who's watching live to jump in the chat and say hi. Let us know where you're watching from, and feel free to make comments. And Paul, when we were in the green room, so to
Yes.
speak, before we went live, you said something that I loved, and I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but we were talking about the mountains, and I was asking if you still see them after all these years of living in LA. You've been here your whole life, and you were like, "Yeah, I totally see them," and then you were like, "I love them," and you were saying that you love being awed by the world. And did you use the word cynicism or
What I said was jaded.
jaded? That was
That's
it.
it. For some people it seems to be very cool to be jaded, and I don't think it's that cool. It's certainly not cool for me.
Yeah.
I
Was it
I,
cool for
I
you when
want
you
to.
were younger?
Excuse me.
When you were younger, teenage years or whatever, did you try on that that shroud of jadedness and then
Yeah.
at some point discard it?
Yes. Yes. I think maybe in the late high school, maybe early college years, late teens, early 20s. I tried it on a little bit to be jaded and cynical, but truthfully, it never felt right. It never felt like
Yeah.
me. And so it was pretty easy for me to abandon it and to go back to being awed and inspired, and
Oh.
kind of just let the world kind of wash over me in all its beauty. And of course, there's plenty of ugliness too, but I like to focus on the beauty and all the gifts that there are.
Yeah. You know, I feel like I this is me, this is my perspective. I feel like we should see everything, but not put our head in the sand and pretend that the things in the world are not happening. Um, but I don't think that that's all we should see. I think some people turn their attention entirely to the darkness and they miss all of the beauty and splendor that is around us every day, the kindness of strangers, mother nature, all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And I don't think that's our job here is to only see the darkness and to turn our backs on all of this stuff.
yeah. I'm sure it's useful in some way to have a certain amount of negativity or skepticism, but but in the long run, it's I don't think it's as beneficial or as fulfilling
Yeah.
as to see beauty and to see wonder,
Yeah.
to be awed by everything that's awesome,
Do
which
you,
most of it is.
do you think that you actively seek wonder and beauty every day, or is it something that just happens accidentally? You notice it.
Yeah, I
Do you
think I
actively
notice it.
seek it?
I mean, I don't feel like I'm actively seeking it. I've I've spent a lifetime, and I thank my father for this. He had such a happy, positive perspective, and I think that kind of I kind of it felt good to sort of adopt that too,
Yeah.
and to open up the curtains and go, it's a beautiful day, you know. And then when I saw my kid, at 5 years old, open up the curtains, going, hey, it's a beautiful day. It's like, yeah, it is a
That was
beautiful.
your dad in your kid,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. I love that idea of your father doing that and then your kid doing that, and you were the channel between the two that kind of carried that thread through.
hopefully so. Hopefully so.
And then your kid passes it on to, whoever else next.
Yeah. Well, that is a one thing about positivity is that I think it does tend to spread in a good way.
Yeah.
I think
So does negativity,
I
and
guess
that
so.
spreads too. Yeah, they both are contagious,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Um this is all making me think about, when you described your father as looking out on the day, like what a beautiful day, and you doing that, and your son doing that. I'm thinking about you as a musician and wondering where where did music come from for you? Where was the seed of becoming a musician? When was that planted for you?
Such a great question. I barely remember, but my parents told me how I would sing, and there's one incident that I remember they always referred to. I was very little. We were out somewhere, I sang. I was singing probably some commercial jingle of the day or some popular tune. I must have been 3 or 4 years old, and and some stranger, stopped and listened and recognized that something great was happening. Maybe
Mm.
complimented me on it or something like that. And so it must have been, stirring and bubbling and getting it started even before I knew that it was. But my parents sang. My dad was a, a amateur musician and a would-be songwriter. He wrote some songs. He tried to get them published. Didn't happen for him, but there was always music.
Mm.
My parents loved to harmonize. They used to make. They made a few recordings in those same way that Elvis like made his very first recording. Walking into Sun Studios because they had you can here we'll give you you'll get a little acetate you can take home and play, and my folks did that. So, and I remember also like walking into some kind of going out to dinner with my family, very little. I don't know if it was. It wasn't the smokehouse which you're familiar with.
Yeah.
There was a place something like that. Some kind of a fancy restaurant with a lounge. And as I was walking through, I distinctly remember walking past the lounge to the restaurant area, and there was a band playing,
Oh.
and I stopped, and I just stood there. And I was like transfixed. Oh my
Mm.
God, this is something that
What do you
happened.
think? What was it? What was it about that band that just literally stopped you in your tracks?
Just the
Yeah.
sound, and then to see people, making the sound. And then I just got into records and, all and radio and music. And then I joined the choir and I started putting together bands. And it was just always, this just seems to be what I should be doing.
Yeah.
So eventually it was.
Yeah, just like you just a dot on the page and another dot on the page and another dot, and at some point you start to connect the dots, and
Mhm.
it starts to take some kind of shape, like make a picture, right? And then you're just putting more dots down that should be there. The picture's already been sketched in.
Yeah, I could have done a lot of things, but this felt like something that I had to do.
Mm.
So I did it.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's still,
Yeah.
you know, it's still thrilling to me. Like when the Hawks are singing and we've got some kind of little three-part harmony thing going on, and it's right in tune, and it's just working, and each voice is vibrating against the other voice.
Mm.
It does something to me.
Yeah, it's this. It is magical.
Yeah.
When I was young, I was in high school. Choir, and the harmonies we are always singing harmonies. I don't know. I feel like there's a magicalness that music always is, but I feel like I didn't appreciate the magic part of it until recently.
Mm.
Now I see it's like when you're surrounded by magic, you don't maybe magic itself doesn't feel magical. It's like like I'm thinking because I'm using the word, I'm thinking of Harry Potter and like the magical world of all these wizards in the
Yeah.
story. And I think the ones that were the wizards that are born into a magic family, magic is just like brushing your teeth. It's just like the regular stuff. But
Sure.
when Harry Potter enters it and realizes there's this whole world, he's like, oh, it's astounding. Like magic is
Hmm.
magical.
Hmm.
Music is magical.
Yeah.
Um, wow. When you sing harmonies, where is your voice? Low, middle, high? What do you sing? The melody, the harmonies? Where's your role?
I have a kind of a medium range voice, and in the Hawks, it's really funny because uh, Paul and I will switch. Rob mostly sings lead on about 95% of the songs. Rob is singing lead, and uh, and Paul and I are doing harmonies, and he could be doing the high part. I could be doing the high part. We could switch in the
Yeah.
middle of the song, in the middle of a section. He'll take a part, I'll take a part. We just move around. When I joined the band, Paul already had a lot of parts that he would sing, or sometimes when Rob and Paul would write a song, they'd already kind of have, Paul would already sort of have a harmony worked out, and it didn't necessarily run parallel to what Rob was singing.
Yeah.
So when I jumped in, I would either have to, go low, then go above, then kind of move around just to make it work. And sometimes we'd adjust Paul's part, and sometimes we wouldn't. We'd just make it work.
Are the harmonies that you guys sing, are they codified or calcified? Are they solid, or is it more that you more or less sing the same thing every time, but it could move around and change? Are they?
Most of the time, it's the same thing. Sometimes Rob will vary his melody to the point where Paul or I might have to do something else. But mostly, I mean, they're worked out,
Yeah.
That's part of what makes it, I think that's part of what makes it work for the listener, and why so many people come up to us afterwards and go, wow, we love the harmonies.
Right.
Well, we work at it.
Yeah.
We
Right.
work at it. And so we usually sing the parts that we've worked out.
Speaking of music, how about a song? Do you want to play a song?
Absolutely. I would love to. So this is an Icy Hawks song. That's probably close enough. This is an Icy Hawks song. We had some friends in Europe, and this guy was putting together a project that the theme of the project was secular hymns, and this is it. What is it? There it is. Hymns from Home. Right? And so it's an album of various artists, including Judy Collins. So I was really thrilled to be on the same record as Judy, and then we put it on a Hawks album as well. I might be in the wrong key. That's better. The wheels are rolling in the ruts of the wheels that have rolled down this trail before. The tumbleweed dreaming, the cactuses seem to be pointing towards some distant door. Where's the stewardess on this wagon train? I need something to cut the fog in my brain when I just can't take it anymore. If you lead, I will follow. You give me comfort from the world. When my heart is feeling hollow, you fill it up with your diamonds and pearls. On the shores of Independence Rock, we roll and laugh and dance and talk and shake off the dust from the day. I stand on the granite just like I planned it. should stay. But the sun is sinking in the west. This whole long trip is just one big test. And damned if I'm gonna fail. If you lead, I will follow. You give me comfort from the world. When my heart is feeling hollow, you fill it up with your diamonds and pearls. The angels are singing, and I'm still clinging to a crag at the end of the ledge. You're calling to me, denying gravity. I close my eyes and step over the edge. If you lead, I will follow. You give me comfort from the world. When my heart is feeling hollow, you fill it up with your diamonds and pearls. When my heart is feeling hollow, you fill it up with your diamonds and pearls.
Yay! I love that.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I was singing along harmonies and
Oh,
such
good.
a beautiful song.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh,
When I was a little girl, my dad played guitar. He doesn't play anymore, but my earliest memories are of sitting at the fireplace hearth and my dad strumming his guitar and him singing and me just totally captivated by song and this, you know, time with dad and, you know, the acoustic guitar and voice and I feel like every week it just transports me right back to probably the first thing in my life that I ever really loved, you know,
that's
just like
beautiful.
sitting by and listening to someone just singing a song.
Your dad still plays? Is he still around?
He's around. He lives in Florida and he doesn't play. He said to me recently that if he's tried to retire and it never sticks and he
Uh-huh.
just, you know, gets back into working and he loves what he does. But he said to me, I said to him recently, you know, Dad, if you were to retire, what would you even do with that time? And he said, "Oh, I would read more books and I would play more guitar and I would be more physically active and I would work on my spiritual life." And I was like, "All right, Dad, I got you. I'm doing all that stuff, so that's my whole life. So you do the thing that you do and I'll take care of this other end and you know, maybe between the two of us we have a more complete and balanced life."
That's lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. um for you, music. So you sang first before you played an instrument. You sang in, you mentioned choirs when you were a kid.
Yeah.
What instrument how did you start playing an instrument?
What a great question. So my first instrument was clarinet.
Oh yeah, mine too. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I played clarinet for about a year, and I don't remember if I was actually in an elementary school band or not. I might have been, but here the roadblocks for me and clarinet were Two big ones. Number one, I could only play one note at a time.
Yeah.
And number two, I couldn't sing while I was playing.
Yeah, that's
You
a
can't
problem.
play clarinet and sing at the same time. And I was so committed to the idea of wanting to sing that it
Mm.
took about a year. And I went, this instrument is not for me. And it was shortly after that 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 I begged my parents to get me a guitar. And
Yeah.
they got me a cheese slicer, strings half an inch above the fretboard guitar that just made my fingers bleed, but I kept trying
And you
anyway.
built up the calluses, so there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. And at the same time, I met a couple other people who did play guitar. So I was inspired, and my parents took pity on me and let me buy or bought me a better guitar.
It's
And
funny how
then,
easy
then
those bar chords get so much easier when the action goes down a little bit.
that helps a lot.
Yeah.
It really helps to have good action. And then, then I was a guitar player, and I could play, polyphonic pieces and sing at the same time. And it wasn't long after that I, you know, with my friends started putting little groups together in junior high and high school.
Okay, I just have to stop right there because you are not, obviously, this is the 88th episode. You are not the first person on this show to say, yeah, I started playing guitar and then I just put a band together. And I just have to, I realized when you just said that there's like a whole thing to unpack between those two events that I still to this day do not understand because clarinet it wasn't my first instrument, but it was essentially my first instrument, and I played the clarinet. I still have my clarinet right here at my feet to my whole life.
Nice.
Um, but there's something very different about learning. So I was in orchestras, right? There was a band.
Sure.
You signed up for a class, and
Hmm.
there was a band director, and there was sheet music in front of you, and the flutes were given this music, and clarinets were given this, and the trombone was given that, and somehow we all got it together. We were on the same, literally the same page, with the downbeat in the same spot, and the notes already, the harmony already decided, the melody,
Sure.
etc., right? And then there's this guy at the front waving his arms around and trying to keep us all together.
Right.
That's my experience of starting to play music, but with like an ensemble. But you and so many other people that I talk to, especially men, but Victoria in Icy Hawks is the same way, where you describe this like coming together with a band, and all of a sudden you're playing music with other people. You don't have someone waving their arms in front. You're not reading off of the page. Somehow you are all in the same key at the same time. Like, how is it that as a new guitar player, when you were a kid, how did that band form? How did that, like, can you remember that coming together?
I sure can.
Feels like this alchemical, this like crazy, weird
But
mystery.
before I tell you that how that happened, I think if you keep playing the clarinet long enough in these situations, then after the band's formal rehearsal with the conductor, before you pack up your instruments, if you got a half an hour, you and the guy who's playing the saxophone and maybe the bass player or the piano player go, hey, let's try this Benny
Oh,
Goodman song.
I missed the boat on that one. We never did that.
I think you have to get to maybe a slightly higher
Yeah.
level, and that's one of the beauties of guitar is that it's not that hard to play enough guitar to make a song and
Yeah.
to make a song that you can sing to. So, and I was coming up learning guitar right at the, and as the great, as my friend Harry Orlov says, the great folk scare of the early '60s was happening. And I mean, folk music, that's the whole point of folk music, is that it's
All the
for the
folks get
folks.
together.
It's
Yeah.
for the folks. So you don't need to know a lot of chords. You don't need to know your augmented and your flatted fifth and all that stuff. You can
Yeah.
play G, C, and D, and you can have a very fine song. And if whether you're playing, "You Are My Sunshine," or something as I did, something that I had heard on a Peter, Paul, and Mary album, which a little more complex, but still doable.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what made it easier.
So Peter,
So
Paul, and
so
Mary was for you. It was in your ears as this these first bands were coming together.
yes,
Their harmonies and
yes,
their song structure and what they were
yes,
singing.
yes. Also Simon and Garfunkel and
Mm-hmm.
other folk and folk rock groups, and I did, I was a big fan of rock and roll, but it was easier to just grab an acoustic guitar
Mm.
and to play these folk songs, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Bud and Travis, Odetta, all the Judy Collins and the folk people of the day. You
Yeah.
didn't need to have a big band. You didn't need to have a big space. Uh, you didn't have your parents yelling at you that the drums were too loud, you know. And if we were in tune, then it sounded pretty good, and people would come around and listen. And then so in junior high, one of the groups, one of the association kind of things for I don't know a mother daughter dance or something. We got hired to play for or an assembly, and and all of a sudden we were a band playing these, our little repertoire of folk songs of the day and of olden days too.
Yeah.
And and because probably because of Peter, Paul, and Mary, my first band was me and another guy and a girl.
What was the name of that band?
Oh, Paul, Vernon, Nancy. Of
So it's really wait, Paul what?
course,
What was it again?
Paul, Vern,
Vern and
and
Nancy.
Nancy.
Okay.
and then um, and then we had that band in junior high,
Wow.
and so we still had it together when we went into high school. And in high school, we all joined the folk music club, and we met a couple other people, and we put a bigger band together. Still same idea, folk. We just added more guitars and voices,
Yeah.
and
So Burroughs High School had a folk music club.
exactly, yes, and one of the members of the band had a friend who was a photographer who was shooting publicity pictures for some independent record labels. And that guy got the record label guy to come hear us. And so at 16 years old, I got signed to record label. And our
And
band made a couple of 45s.
that, my friends, is the magic of Los Angeles.
And that is the magic of Los Angeles. I
Yeah.
mean, I could not have done that in probably Topeka. Maybe I could have, I don't know. But Los
Yeah.
Angeles seemed to be just teeming with music from every level, from junior high amateur level to the best in the world. And Hollywood wasn't that far away, and there it was. The opportunity was there.
Wow. What a cool thing.
So that was where it kind of started.
It started with Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Judy Collins, and Simon and Garfunkel for me also. But I didn't have a folk music club, so I was in the band and I played clarinet.
Wow, that's amazing, really. But listen, all those artists are are they're super super talented.
Yeah.
Peter, Paul, and Mary were not so much writers, but they had great
Beautiful.
arrangers and great
Yeah.
arrangements, and they could certainly play and sing. Voice, a beautiful blend of voices.
Yeah.
Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon, great writer.
Yeah.
Their two things together, and then they're when they when their little folk recording got the rock instruments added by their label, not by them, then suddenly it's part of the beginning of folk rock.
Yeah.
So fun stuff.
You know, the thing about folk music is that it keeps the spotlight on the song and the and I'm thinking about, those bands that you just mentioned, like the harmonies, but the song and the lyrics, the melody, the harmonies, um those are what is spotlighted, especially in those days. Whereas you mentioned rock, like, oh, you liked rock, but it was simpler, it was easier to play folk. The thing about rock music, it seems like the spotlight can be on a whole lot of other things. It can be on the sound, the energy, the noise, um, you know, the drumming, whatever it is. Um, but the song itself, at the root, the melody, the lyrics, that is at the heart of that folk music
It
that you are
is.
that you are loving.
It is, and it doesn't have to be as prominent in rock and roll, but of course, if you look at any Chuck Berry lyric, you go, well, I mean, there's a song, there's a
Yeah.
lyricist, so it was there
Mm,
too, just maybe
yeah.
not as consistently.
So when did you start writing words? Where does
Very,
the so
very. As
you
soon as I picked up a guitar.
well, you talked about like the very root seed of music. You walked into the smokehouse or wherever, and
Yeah,
you're rooted to the ground, staring at the band, and also you talked about how you were just singing,
yeah,
at age 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it was.
yeah.
Where did words, like, if you can bring it back before you started writing songs, like, where was the seed for words
I
in
mean,
your
I
life?
imagine that, I was, uh, as most readers will do, as you know, you'll read almost anything that's put in front of you. And so I
Yeah.
was fascinated by, I'd read the record label on the 45. I'd read everything on it,
Yeah.
including who wrote the darn thing.
Mm.
And at some point, you realize that somebody wrote these songs,
Mm.
and oh my gosh, some of these were written by the artists themselves.
Mm.
P. Everly, Phil Everly wrote this. He wrote this Everly Brothers song, and then it's like, maybe I should try to write a song. So I
Mm.
started writing songs by myself, with friends, people I'd hang out with. And so I mean, those early songs are, uh, they're not great, but they have all the elements there.
Yeah.
I listened enough so that I could understand what the structure of the song is.
Yeah.
Here's a verse, here's a chorus, here's a bridge if there is one. And you come back and you do the chorus again, and then your song's done. It's lovely to work in this 3-minute format,
I love
three
that you
minute,
just
3 or 4 minute format.
yeah, I love that you just said that about the 3-minute format. But also I love that you said all the elements were there. Like, it wasn't maybe a great song, but the elements were there. And I just really love that, because I think back to my early days as a songwriter, and any artist's early days, and how, we have this curiosity and interest and passion to do this thing, and we might not be, holding up a Picasso at that particular moment. We're not going to be this brilliant thing right out of the box, but we just start to find those elements and kind of put them in their place. And I think that what we need from the adults in the room at the time is for them to recognize that those elements are there, and kind of like, oh yeah, you go, you're getting something here. And
Yeah, encouragement is a good thing.
encouragement is a very good thing. Sometimes the adults in the room look at it and they're like, this isn't a very good song. Oh, but you're missing the point, which is that the elements, like, if only the child could say, you're
Yeah.
missing the point. I know it's not a good song, but look at the elements. We got the building blocks of a really good song, and I might not write that really good song for a decade or a few decades, but it's coming together. We got the building blocks.
Yeah.
What do you like about the 3-minute format, or the 2 to 4 minute, whatever? But what do you like about that? Because you mentioned it.
Well, for one thing, it, it's a you don't have to spend as much time on it as you would writing a 250-page novel. That's going to take some time. But ideally, a good or even a great song can be written sometimes in one sitting,
Mm.
a couple hours. Sometimes it might take, 2 or 3 get-togethers to get it all ironed out. But I like that, if you say it right and the music is right, then in this little compact form,
Yeah.
it's a little gem, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it sparkles, and people people can still people have come up to me and said that song, it meant so much to me. It
Yeah.
touched. Well, if you can touch somebody,
3 minutes, right? How
3 minutes
amazing
to
is that?
touch somebody, that's something.
Wow.
And I get touched. I
Yeah.
I can listen to some of the same things that moved me decades ago, and I can hear them again, and they still move me. They move me
Oh,
again.
yeah.
You know.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I like the form, and I guess we also gravitate towards what we can do
Mm.
well. You know. I think, and I guess I do it well enough that it keeps pulling me back to do it some more.
I love the force that a song has to be economical in the language.
That's the
You
perfect
have,
word.
you kind of establish a rule as the songwriter very early on, if like the first line or the first 4 lines, like this is the rule of the song melodically, rhythmically, structurally, and I'm saying this is the rule, and now I'm going to abide by that rule, and I want to develop the story or the setting or the scene or whatever the idea of the song, but I have just defined by the first 4 lines what the rule is going to be, and I might choose to break that rule in verse 3. I certainly will deviate far from it if there's a bridge or in the B section, the chorus, but I like that we sort of we make these decisions, conscious or not, as songwriters. This is the container, and now I'm going to fill it with some other material, but I'm still going to adhere to these boundaries that I have
Mm-hmm.
established,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to do it fast, like snippet, 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 and then 3 minutes are gone.
The last song you sang, I guess it must have been in Victoria's episode. It was, I, it was beautiful. You had some really excellent imagery. It's a song about,
Was that by yourself, about being
yes,
yeah, fine by
yes,
yourself?
about how you can survive alone, about how being strong alone, and
Yeah.
finding solutions on your own, and making being on your own work. Really, you had some really nice imagery, and I love the
Thank you.
theme. It was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, you've been watching.
Well, I have. I thought, I'm gonna have to, kick it up to stay on the level of my predecessors, because they're totally rocking it.
All right, Paul, then you well know that this show has a book element. And I just realized that my little, there we go, my little Tomes and Tunes logo was missing at the top corner, but there it's back. Um,
There it is.
so, this is a good segue. What have you been reading?
Okay.
What do you
Well,
like to read?
this is going to be fun. Here I have. This is a book I just finished, and it's called Blind Crescent,
Blind Crescent.
and it's by Michelle Berry. And let me tell you how I found the book. I
Yeah.
told you before. Were we on? We ran the air in the green room. I don't remember, but uh, I get a lot of recommendations
That's right.
for books from a lot of different people, like my old college friend, uh, or Rob Waller or Paul Lax. Rob has directed me toward a number of really fine books that I really enjoyed, that you talked about, like the Goldfinch.
We talked about a lot of books. Yeah.
Yeah, the Goldfinch, and then he recommended he said, "Have you ever read Lonesome Dove?" I said, "No." He gave me a copy of that, and those are two really fabulous works. But this, my family, took a little vacation a couple weeks ago to Hawaii,
Nice.
and I wasn't reading a book at the time, and I didn't take a book. I took a bunch of magazines with me, and I knew I wouldn't have a lot of time anyway, because we weren't there for that long, and it was going to be full of family outings and events and things. I didn't think I'd have much time to read anyway, but there I was sitting in the in our lovely condo with a view of the beach and the whales jumping out of the water anytime you looked out there.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm tired of reading these magazines. I wonder if there are any books in this place. And so I looked around and I opened a drawer, and in the drawer there were about 4 or 5 books, and I just kind of grabbed this one because it looked interesting. I liked the title, and I like, I like reading a lot of different things, but my favorite, I read for entertainment. I mean, some people read to educate themselves, and that's okay. I do that too, but but I especially like to be entertained, and so and I tend to run toward um, kind of quirky novels that might have some humor in them
Okay.
on their way, and so I looked at this book and I said, let's give this a try,
Yeah.
and I read the first few pages and I said, yeah, this is my kind of book. So that's how I found this one in a condo in Hawaii.
Wow.
And I had read about a third of it when we had to leave. So now I got a dilemma.
Yeah. What do you
Do I
do?
do I take the book?
Steal the book?
Do I steal the book from the condo? If I had had maybe another really good novel to replace it with, I might have thought about that.
Yeah.
And it crossed my mind. I thought, no, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to find it. So when I got home, I did
Oh, so you didn't
a
even have it
search.
on the plane.
No, I didn't have it on the plane. That would have been great. I had to watch movies.
Man, that's rough.
So when I got home, I did an internet search and I found the book and I ordered it on eBay.
Yeah.
And so I had to wait, a week and a half before it came, and then I could pick up where I left off. And it was interesting because when I read while I was looking on the internet, of course there were reviews there too, right? So I read some of the reviews. There's always some that love it, some that hate it, but there
Yeah.
were a couple that said, "Oh, we really loved it, but the ending was so disappointing."
Oh.
So I kind of braced myself
Yeah. You
as I
prepared.
got nearer to the ending. I was like, "Is this going to be a big disappointment or what?" But it wasn't a big disappointment for me. I liked the ending.
So you have finished the book. So tell
I
us,
just finished it.
do you have a little excerpt so we can get
I
a
do.
sense of the writing style?
I do. So the book is about this particular cul-de-sac and the 6 homes and the
Mm.
families that live there and their interactions. Uh, one of the characters, one of the residents, is a sort of a middle-aged guy, single. He lives there with his parents. He takes care of them. They're very old and they're very crabby. Um, and he has a little business that he runs out of the home. Uh, it's his business is uh, dried flowers. So Jackson is in his shed getting his roses ready to deliver to the florist. Weddings in the summer, and lately the craze has been for dried flower arrangements as centerpieces on every table. Jackson doesn't know why. The humidity in the air wilts the centerpieces in a flash. Plus, the dried flowers are so fragile, they probably end up as potpourri if someone takes them home. But Jackson doesn't question this strange fad. It brings in some money. If everyone wants to put on black tuxes and heavy satin wedding gowns and go out into that heat, if they want to spend twice as much money on his dried flowers, that's their problem. And they all want roses. It baffles him. If he were ever to get married, he'd get married in the fall. All the wonderful colors and the heat gone south. He'd do something with fallen leaves and pine cones. If he were to get married. Funny. If Jackson were the type of man to laugh at himself, he would. As it is, Jackson places the dried rosebuds into boxes of matching colors. He labels the boxes. Red, burgundy, blue, on and on. When he first began doing this, he would use exotic words to describe colors. tropical sunset or sea foam. But the women at the shop he delivered to used to laugh at him. They would natter to each other and then laugh at him, turn with mouths wide open and laugh, sometimes point. We don't understand, the owner told him. Why not just red? Why not just blue? Why these fancy words? So Jackson modified his language, toned it down, made it ordinary, and hoped that his flowers would speak for themselves. They also laugh at him for using the sand drying method, when a freeze-dry machine would do the job. But Jackson is a traditionalist. He likes the feel of the sand between his fingers. He likes to take time on things in order to make things perfect. He likes to know what he'll get at the end of the process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of language and the kind of descriptive style that appeals to me.
So that was, say the name and the author again.
Blind Crescent
Blind
by
Crescent.
Michelle Berry.
Blind Crescent by Michelle
And
Berry.
I'm going to get more of her books, because when I find a book that I like, I mean, for the most part, there are some cliches in here. You know, it's not a perfect book,
Yeah.
but it's entertaining. It's a good read. It's my kind of book.
Yeah.
So when I find an author that I like, then I want to read more.
Yeah.
I've done that with a lot of authors.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I just finished an audio read. I always have like a hardback book on my nightstand, if not several that I'm reading. Right now I have a couple. And then also when I do that walk that I was telling you about before,
Yes.
sometimes I don't listen to anything. Sometimes I talk on the phone to a family or friend. And a lot of times I'll listen to podcasts or an audiobook. And so I was listening to a book called The Three Marriages. I'm trying to remember the subtitle, but it's by the writer David White. And I don't have the hardback here. I was listening through Audible. But
Okay.
it basically was, it's an essayistic, a book length essay, basically exploring, kind of pushing back on that idea of that idea that we need to find a work-life balance. And he pushes back on that idea for a couple of reasons, and then in the end concludes that what we really most need is a way to integrate our three most important relationships: the relationship to ourself, the relationship to our vocation, and our relationship to our beloved. And how to not find the balance where it's all just balanced on this fulcrum, and if you go too far in one direction you're stealing from the other side, but where all of it feeds each other and is integrated. And he goes into a deep exploration of each of those three things, and he calls them all a marriage to the self. And he suggests that whether we are conscious of it or not, we take vows, much like marriage vows, to ourself and to our vocation. For example, when he said that, I thought about my relationship with music. You know, for richer or poorer, till death do I part. Yes, yes, I am married to it. You know.
Yeah.
And he kind of had me at that point. I was like, yeah, that's true. And also, obviously, my relationship to myself, till death do I part, for sure. For richer or poorer, for sure. And so, what is that relationship? And in any case, I can't share an excerpt from that because it was on Audible, but I have a collection of his poems. This is a book called River Flow, and it's new and selected poems by David White. And I thought I would just share this short poem that I read years ago, and it comes back to me all the time. I am the kind of person who walks out of my house at night and immediately looks up for the moon. I kind of keep track of where we are in the moon cycle. Is it a crescent? Is it a full? Is it a new moon? And I'm always looking for the stars, and you know, it's not easy to see many stars here in Los Angeles, outside of the movie stars, right?
One thing I don't like about it, that's my least favorite thing about LA, is the night sky.
The night sky, it's rough.
It's rough.
It's rough. I'm actually going out to Arizona. I'm playing at the Tucson Folk Festival in a couple of weeks, and I'm really excited about particularly being in Tucson for an evening to see, you know, the sky. that night, you know. But this is a song, or this is a poem called Faith, and
What's it called?
it's called Faith.
Faith.
He says, I want to write about faith, about the way the moon rises over cold snow night after night, faithful even as it fades from fullness, slowly becoming that last curving and impossible sliver of light before the final darkness. But I have no faith myself. I refuse it the smallest entry. Let this then, my small poem, like a new moon, slender and barely open, be the first prayer that opens me to faith.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like that poem is what helped me in part to start to even understand what faith means. I struggled with I remember I was talking with some friends at some point, and there was kind of like a conversation, like, let's all go around the circle and share what you think about regarding this word. And the word that the person offered was faith, and I was like, what is that even? I was really struggling with what does that even mean? What is the difference between trust and faith? You know, and this poem was something that really helped me a little bit to start to...
That first song that I sang, or the song that I sang, it deals with that a little bit, in my mind at least. It does. That whole bridge section about stepping over the edge.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's what that's about. That's, faith is a step over the edge.
Yeah.
In a way. And the other thing about faith, it's kind of dark in here.
Yeah, it's getting darker.
Let me see what I can do about that. The other thing about faith is that I think we have to. I don't think I'm the first one to say this either, but I think we have to. It's one of the things that we can practice.
Yeah.
And in practicing faithfulness, you know, the cliche is, you know, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But I think if you try to be faithful, I think you can be more faithful. I know some people who I hope will work on that, and of course I'm working on it all the time.
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like that's like a whole conversation that I can't wait for the next time you and I meet to like just dive into that and just talk about that.
Please, that would be so great.
Paul, for this conversation, would you play another song?
I will.
I think we're coming up toward the end, and I would love to hear some more music, and then I'll take us out with a song, and
sounds great.
We'll talk about faith next time.
Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to play another I See Hawks song that I wrote with the other Hawks. When we were young, you rode on the handlebars of my bike down Mission Boulevard in the San Francisco night. We ran from bar to bar, smoking and holding hands, dreaming of our life together, making all kinds of plans. If you remind me, if you remind me, if you remind me. Snow fell on Lake Tahoe while we talked in the casino. When the gambling crowd thinned out, I drove you back to Reno. We watched the Truckee River roll on past the park. I won't forget if you remind me. If you remind me. If you remind me. If you remind me. If you remind me of the day we met, standing on the corner of Gower and Sunset, I won't let you walk away, mad at myself for my own mistakes. I won't do it again if you remind me that you're my best friend. Oh, if you remind me. If you remind me. If you remind me. Thank you.
Such a sweet song.
It was a fun song to write. We ended up kind of combining our own experiences, our own histories, with in the song, so that one verse is kind of a little more Rob and his
Is he San Francisco?
beloved in San Francisco, and me and
Gower and
my
Sunset?
wife in Lake Tahoe. And
Oh,
Lake
okay.
Florida.
Chucky. Okay.
All more of the Gower and Sunset, and
Okay.
yet we think we wanted it to all weave together, and then the bridge kind of is a it's sort of like, how are we going to remember this without help?
Yeah.
Are we going to is there dementia in the family?
Mm.
Are we going to lose our minds at some point and need to be reminded of these things?
Yeah.
Maybe, and it would be nice if we were reminded of them
Yeah.
in that eventuality, when I come to my last page, when I'm lost in some far off gaze,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
I my first big relationship, when it broke up, I remember soon after that I was on a blanket at the Newport Folk Festival in Rhode Island, and
wow,
I was living in Boston. I love to go to the festivals, and that of course is a wonderful one. But I remember I was alone. I had friends with me, but I felt suddenly very autonomous. Like I had been walking through the world with this other person for a few years, and we were no longer together. And there I was at this wonderful festival, and I distinctly remember lying on this blanket and thinking, wow, like nobody is there to say, hey, do you remember when? You know, the part of what we do when we're in a relationship with someone is remind each other. That's a big part of it. You build your history, you retell your origin story all the time. You think about the future, of course, but a lot of it is like those inside jokes or that inside language that you create, or just the retelling over and over and over again of the stories.
yes, it's like a body of work that is the work of your relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that song, Paul. Thank you for playing it.
Thank you.
I'm going to take us out on a song. I played it when Rob was on the show a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to play it again because in the interim, I had a realization that I didn't know why I was strumming the song. I wanted to be finger picking it.
All right.
And so
Version 2.
So this is version 2 of the song. So it's it's still working its way under my fingers, but I'm really
I love
enjoying
that.
this. I'm really
I feel
enjoying
like
how it's,
I've become part of the process now.
yeah, the total IC Hawks process,
Yeah.
and it's so cool. Yeah, this has been really great. Oh, I'm a little sad to say goodbye to the Hawks after this show.
I hope we can come back.
I hope so too. If not,
Otherwise I'll meet you at Talleyrand.
that's right. We'll get some French fries, or you can have your hash browns, whatever. All right. So this is a song called Bramblevine, and I was thinking about the blackberries that grew in the woods by my house when I was growing up. The sweet fruit and the really painful thorns that grow on those plants. Let's see here. Can you hear this okay? I'm going to do that all again. Blackberries grew in the thicket north of our yard. In summer we'd pick 'em and come home with stickers and thorns in our arms. Some hours later, when supper was plated and served, we'd barely remember the pain for the pleasure that went into making dessert. And some kind of love is like that, a sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramblevine, heating time for my heart from the scraps, like making pie from scratch. Some kinds of love is like that. Someone once showed me the best way to work with the dough. Just a few presses, you crimp down the edges, then squeak the old oven door closed. Finding a balance to strike between effort and ease requires some practice, delicate lattice, you learn it degree by degree. And some kind of love is like that, a sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramblevine, heating time for my heart from the scraps, like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love is like that. Some kind of love is like that, sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramblevine, heating time for my heart from the scraps, like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love is like that.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's a pretty good country song right there.
Thank you.
The imagery is really nice, and the pie illusion, pie allegory there is really great.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Still working out the fingers.
Oh, that sounds good. I liked it the other way too, but I think it's kind of just a little bit more of a delicate presentation this way.
Yeah. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show.
Arielle, oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It was really just a pleasure and a delight.
Yeah, so awesome to just have the time to talk with you. Yeah. And next time we'll put a dog ear on the page about faith, and we'll talk about that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be fun.
You stay right there. I'm just going to take you out of the feed, and then I'll say
Okay,
goodbye.
thanks,
And I'll
Arielle.
say goodbye to you behind the scenes.
Okay.
Hi everybody. What a good conversation with Paul Marshall from Icy Hawks in LA. This was the fourth hawk of the kettle of hawks that I've had on the show over the last few weeks, and we had Steve Key, a songwriter from the Central Coast, in between the hawks, like a hawk Steve Key sandwich. In any case, this was a really great conversation. If you missed the other ones, go back to the archives. They're all on my website. You can also find them on YouTube. And we continue with the show next week with Genevieve from the East Coast, and I hope to see you there. Until we meet again, take good care, and I will see you soon.